So welcome back to the Rolling Crash Course. My name is Jim Schultz, and you made it, man. We are in episode number 5. So I would argue that this is the most valuable episode of the entire Crash Course. Because for the next, 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, however long it ends up being, we're going to talk about some rolling FAQ. Now, I'd be willing to bet that in the previous 4 episodes, episode 1, 2, 3, and 4, you've had some questions along the way. Well, my goal and my intention with these FAQs is I want to fill in some, maybe even all of the gaps that you've had along the way here in episode number 5, rolling FAQ. So without further ado, let's do it, man. Let's dive right in to episode number 5 of the Rolling Crash Course. All right, so let's dive right in because we have a lot to get to. FAQ number 1. Now, these are in no particular order, but our first FAQ. What do you do when you have a position that's been tested very early in the cycle? You still have like 35 days to go or 40 days to go or 43 days to go. Like, do you still roll that position? Like, do you still move that position out? Do you still move, one of your strikes if it's tested? This one is a little bit trickier. The safe, diplomatic answer is yes. Roll the defined risk strategy if you can for a credit, and roll the undefined risk strategy for sure because you can always do it for a credit. But I gotta be honest, this is a unique situation. It's kind of a gray area. So if you wanted to wait just a wee bit longer to see if the market might come back to you, to see if things don't normalize, I gotta be honest, man. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. Just don't tell Tom that you did it. All right, so FAQ number 2. What do you do when your strikes are not available, the strikes that you currently have in your position, are not available in the next cycle? How do you handle that? Well, there's actually a few things that you want to consider here, so let's have a look. So first, if the strikes aren't available in the next monthly cycle, they will be eventually. So you could wait until more strikes begin to show up in that cycle, which usually happens with at least a few weeks to go in the cycle. But second, you could also consider rolling into a nearer term weekly cycle. These cycles typically have more strikes available. Just be mindful of the bid-ask spread differential and make sure that it isn't super, super wide, making a fill in that option a much more challenging task. But third, you could always roll your strikes up or down too, even if you don't want to, just to get into that next monthly cycle. When you do this, just be aware that you are potentially altering the intrinsic value of the position. More specifically, assuming the strike or strikes are in the money, whenever you move the strike further away from the stock price, it will boost your credit collected, but it will always move the position deeper in the money. Similarly, when you move the strike closer to the stock price, it will lessen your credit collected and possibly even require a net debit, but you are reducing the in-the-moneyness or intrinsic value of the position. Now, which should you choose? There is no right or wrong answer. It's all about gimmies and gotchas, but those are the things to consider. So FAQ number 3, 21 days to go. Defined risk and undefined risk. Handle these guys differently or handle them the same? Well, here is how you want to think about this. Undefined risk. Always roll at 21 days to go. Don't think about it. Don't debate it. Don't hesitate. Just go ahead and do it. There's no reason not to do that because you can always do it for a credit. But define risk. If you can roll at 21 days to go for a credit, then go ahead and do it. But if you can't and it's a debit, then just sit on it. Sit on it and hold it all the way to expiration if you need to. Remember, you have that long leg in place, so you're not exposed to the gamma risk that you would be with a naked position. So when it comes to 21 days to go, defined risk and undefined risk strategies need to be handled differently, and this is how I would think about them. All right, so moving right along, FAQ number 4. Are there any exceptions to the never roll for a debit rule? Yes. Let's look at a couple of them. There are 2 main exceptions to the never pay a debit to roll rule. The first is with an undefined risk strategy like a strangle, inverted strangle, or even just a short put. Paying a debit to roll when you recenter your strikes is definitely something to consider. Now, if you don't want to mess with this and just keep rolling for credits, like that's always an option. But if you want to reposition your strikes into a more favorable spot and you're willing to use some of your collected credits to pay for that debit roll, then by all means, it's something to think through. Second, with a defined risk strategy, one situation where you might want to consider paying to roll is, say, a vertical spread where the cycle that you're rolling to has earnings. Earnings are binary events that always have the potential for explosive moves, so it might be worth it to you to pay 20 cents or 35 cents to roll a $5 wide vertical into that cycle and see if the earnings can bail you out. Yes, you are adding risk to the trade and you must be aware of that. But the potential payday from an earnings move in your favor might make it worthwhile to consider. All right, so FAQ number 5, and this one is kind of a twofer, and it is dealing with our old pal, the iron condor. So number 1, should you roll the untested side of an iron condor when the other side is tested? And number 2, should you consider legging out of the strategy when one side is tested? Let's dig in. As for rolling the untested side of an iron condor when one side is tested, yes, you can certainly do that. And if risk reduction is your primary goal, then you should absolutely consider this adjustment. Just be aware that the closer you bring those short strikes together, the more and more difficult you're making it to make money. This is largely because the region of profitability is shrinking smaller and smaller. And with the long options on each side, your margin for error to make money is already on the small side due to the friction between the longs and the shorts in the strategy. So yes, you can roll the untested side in on an iron condor, but don't forget, you can also choose to do nothing. And I would also add that if risk reduction in a defined risk strategy is your primary goal, I have to point out, you might be trading too large. Your total risk in a defined risk trade should be controlled on entry. It shouldn't be something that you feel pressured to reduce during the life of the trade. Like, you want to have full freedom and flexibility to do what you want to do in a given moment, not feel like you have to do something. Okay, fair enough. But what about potentially legging out of an iron condor? So rather than roll the untested side in, why not just take it off? Well, this is definitely an option to consider, and you can certainly do that. Our research has shown that this doesn't really help you over time, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. It might not help you per se, but it doesn't appear to hurt you either. So if you want to close the untested side and just handle the tested side, by all means, give it a go. Just be aware that keeping the untested side on can really be helpful when it comes to rolling the strategy forward, though. This is because you'll always be able to roll the untested side for a credit, whereas the tested side will usually require a debit. So by keeping the untested side on, it does give you more options to keep rolling your iron condor forward for credits. So moving right along, FAQ number 6. Why is it so important when it comes to rolling a vertical spread that you keep your strikes the same? Why not widen those strikes out to improve that credit? Well, there are a couple of parts to this, and let's have a look. With a vertical spread, as we talked about back in episode number 2, if you roll for a credit and you keep your strikes the same, you're always improving that risk return dynamic. You're decreasing potential risk and increasing potential return. That's good. But if you widen your strikes, that might not be the case. Suppose you had a $5 wide vertical that you collected $2 on at order entry. Now you want to roll the position, but to keep the same strikes, you would have to pay a 40-cent debit. So that's a no-go. But let's say if you widen to a $7 wide vertical, you flip that into a 90-cent credit. Why not do that? Well, that credit does go to improving your profit potential, as you now have $2.90 collected, not just $2, so that's good. But you also now have a $7 wide vertical, and your total risk has also increased from $3 in the original trade to now $4.10, or the $7 width, less the $2.90 collected. The last thing we want to do is add risk to a rolled vertical spread. So that's why this is a no-go. All right, so FAQ number 7. Are there any situations where normally you would roll and the mechanics suggest that you should roll, but you actually don't want to roll? Are there any special situations where this is the case? Yes. Here's at least one example. There's probably more than this example, but I think this is the one that is going to be the most common one that we come across as tasty traders. You have a binary event in the next cycle. The next cycle that you were thinking about rolling too. So this could be like a Federal Reserve announcement. This could be like an earnings date. Those would be two classic examples. And maybe you just don't want to deal with it. Like maybe you don't want to roll into that cycle because you don't want to have your position on during that event. That makes perfect sense. So what do? Well, here, maybe you roll into a weekly cycle before that event. That's an option. Maybe you close the position altogether. That's an option. And maybe, just maybe, you hold that position just a wee bit longer to see if the market comes back to you. Just don't tell Tom. All right, so FAQ number 8, this video is never going to end. How do you track your P&L on a rolled position? Well, let's have a look. This one is really simple because all you need to do is pull up the order chains inside of the Tastyworks platform. Doing this will show you every roll that you made, every piece to the trade package compared to the new mark price, which will always give you an accurate real-time P&L for that position. And lastly, believe it or not, we are very close to the end now. FAQ number 9. This might be the number one question that I am asked as it relates to rolling on a regular basis. Jim, I have a strangle on. I've made my first roll because one side was tested. How do I know when it's time to roll again? Let's take a look. This situation is very much a gray area, and there is no hard and fast rule, so keep that in mind. But once you make that first strangle roll and you reduce your directional bias by 30 to 50%, how do you know when to roll again? Well, here, I would normally look at my new break-even points. If one of those gets hit, it might be time to move into a straddle. Okay, so now you're in a straddle. How do you know when to roll into an inverted strangle? Well, again, I would use the break-even points. Once those are hit, it might be time to consider moving into an inverted strangle. You could sit, do nothing, and wait a wee bit longer, but this is the time when moving into the inverted strangle is absolutely on the table. All right, so now I'm into an inverted strangle. Now what do I do? Well, generally speaking, you've reached the final stop on the train tracks, as I like to say. You could make the inversion even wider. That's a possibility. You could consider paying a debit to uninvert, also a possibility. But by and large, the default setting here will be to do nothing, let the extrinsic value fall off the options, and hope the stock stays within your short strikes. All right, so that was all that I had planned for the rolling FAQ. But you know, man, we are having so much fun. Let's toss in a couple bonus FAQs. So these are a couple of FAQs that came through my Twitter feed just recently that I wanted to include here in the crash course. So the first one came from Larry over there at LT Baxter over there on Twitter. So definitely give him a look, give him a follow, and connect with him. He had a great question. He said, Jim, why don't I just forget about rolling? Why don't I just close the positions and find a higher probability setup and just kind of start fresh? Because rolling is just technically starting a new position anyway. That's a really, really great question. Let's dive in. So to be clear, that itself is a solid strategy. Like, don't roll, just take what comes by 21 days to go and then move on from the trade either way. We have found, however, that by following our adjustment mechanics, adding duration to our losing positions, and doing so in ways that always look to reduce risk, it's worthwhile to stick with a losing trade for at least a little bit to give it a chance to come back. But not even rolling at all, as Larry suggests, is certainly an option. And it's a good one at that. And second, and lastly, the final FAQ of the whole crash course, I promise. Mark over there at MarkNoCollins11 on Twitter. So definitely give him a look. He wanted to know, hey, Jim, wait a minute. If I have a deep in the money short put, can I just keep rolling this thing out forever? Like, can I just keep rolling this thing out forever, keep picking up extrinsic value until the position recovers? Can I do that? And the answer is, the short answer is, the long answer is, yes, you certainly can do that. At this point, a deep in the money short put's basically just stock. It's basically just stock. You hold on to it for as long as you can. You get a little extrinsic value along the way as a bit of a kicker, and you just hold it until the position recovers. You can absolutely, unequivocally do that. Wow, man. And like that, we are finished. I promise. We are done. The rolling crash course is done. The FAQs are over. It is finished. And so, guys, I am so humbled. I am so appreciative of your attention and your time and your investment in this crash course and maybe any of the other crash courses that you have checked out. We now have about a handful of them on the YouTube channel, so definitely give those a look if you haven't done so already. But guys, don't forget, I am always available to help you however I possibly can. You can always email me. I'm jschultz@tastytrade.com. We can connect on Twitter. I'm at jschultz. F3, so please reach out to me there if you have any questions whatsoever. And that's it, guys. When you are ready, I will see you in the next crash course, which I have no idea what it's going to be on, and I have no idea when it's going to be released, but I will see you there.